Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another week in off-season baseball. Today is January 20th, and we'll be talking some off-season baseball. So, I have four categories on the bottom, but we're going to begin with Anthony Santander heading to Toronto. So, Friday night, I tweeted out that talks were kind of progressing between the two, and a deal got done today. So, it's 5 years, $92.5 million. Heavily deferred. I think 20%, 30%, a lot of deferrals in the contract. Um, but they got their guy. And good for them. Really good for Toronto. With incentives, he has an opt out after the third year, but the team can opt back in, kind of like the Garrett Cole deal, where if they opt back in, the incentives climb up to more money. So it would go up to like 110 million. The exact amount deferred, 35 million deferred. It could go up to past 50 million if the incentives kick in. So once again, this is a good deal for the Blue Jays, and they're not done. They're not done. They've had off-season flops this off-season where, they're in on Sasaki. They were in on Tanner Scott. They were in on Juan Soto. Pretty much any of the big names that came out of this market, they were in on and talking to, and they just couldn't get a deal done. So now they're hot in pursuit of two things. Number one, they want Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso can play first for them. And two, I think more importantly than one, is they want to extend Vladdy. So we'll get to the Pete stuff later. But we'll start now with mid-market madness. So this is kind of sucky to talk about, the mid-market madness stuff, because I feel like I've discussed it a lot on here over the past few days with everything going on in baseball, but I think it still needs to be said. So the Cardinals general manager spoke yesterday on the Nolan Arenado stuff. So I don't have the audio here, but I have the the transcription. So their top priorities 1, 2, and 3, are to trade Nolan Arenado. That's what they're saying. Priorities 1, 2, and 3 are to trade Nolan. And it's like, alright, so you're gonna trade Arenado, cool. Where are you trading him to? So right now, they're going to try and trade him probably to a team that they want to trade him to. And one of those teams is the New York Yankees. The New York Yankees, in my opinion, are the perfect fit for Nolan Arenado. They have the talent. They have. Why does it say Sasaki signs? This is weird. So, they have the talent, and they have what the Cardinals want. So, they don't know, the Cardinals front office, if this will be done by the beginning of spring training, but they're aggressively trying. Now, I did hear this morning, I'm going to read it out loud for the people on audio, but it's also, I can't bring it up on the screen because it is way too big to present, but I have it here. The Cardinals are exploring talks that involve them retaining a massive amount of Nolan Arenado's contracts, with the aim to get more of a return vs trying for a pure dump. This shift happened over the past week. This shift has allowed them to re engage with teams that were interested in Nolan but didn't want to give up a huge everything earlier this winter. Several of these teams are teams Nolan would approve of, and a team that is worth watching here under these circumstances would be LA, maybe New York, and other teams in the AL East. So LA, I think, is out. And I said this yesterday on X. LA's out. All right. This whole narrative that the Los Angeles Dodgers are just going to trade for Nolan Arenado is completely stupid. Why would they go out and trade for Nolan Arenado when they can just sign Alex Bregman and not have to part with prospects? That doesn't make sense. Bregman is younger. Bregman, you're going to have control of the money. It would make more sense if the Dodgers are going to go for a right-handed bat at third base, a big bat at third base, right-handed. They should go for Bregman over Arenado. Similar defense, Bregman, and their hitting's a little comparable. Bregman obviously younger, not tied into a 3-year deal. You can maybe get Bregman on that with opt-outs. So there's valuable things there. The Yankees, I think, is where he's going. It's not just me being an arrogant Yankee fan. This is in general. I think he's a Yankee. The reason I think he's going to be a New York Yankee is because they have the prospects that can go back if they want to make things expended, and they kind of need him. They're not going to spend the money on Bregman the way the Dodgers would if they needed a third baseman, and they're fine with Muncy. They're not going to spend the money on Bregman. Arenado would be a perfect fit in that locker room at that hot corner, and his batting metrics, even though everyone wants to bitch, moan, and complain that they've gone down in 3 years, his batting was better than Gleyber Torres. I showed the stats last week. They were better than Gleyber Torres. So this whole idea that the Yankees are losing, if they acquire Arenado, they are a better team than last year. I know, believe me, I know. Losing Juan Soto fucking sucked. It did. It did, plain and simple. It sucked. When I read that tweet, I was pissed. And then reading tea leaves afterwards, I got less pissed because it wasn't on the New York Yankees. It was on Juan Soto and Juan Soto's camp wanting the most money. And that was it. They wanted the most money. Therefore, they went to the New York Mets, who are the third best team in their division. And we'll get to them in a minute when we talk about the Pete stuff because I'm going to bring them up. Because they're not done either, but I'll get to them in a minute. Let me finish reading this tweet out. I told you it was long. The Angels are another team that was interested, but not under the Cardinals' parameters. There was also conflicting information that no one would even accept that trade. Remember, Arenado has a full no trade clause. He wants to go somewhere where the destination is a winning destination. That's why it's really down to New York and LA because those are the only real two teams that give you the best chance. And maybe Boston, but we'll get to Boston in a second here because they do have their own segment in this tweet. Toronto has called and shown interest even under Cardinals' old parameters, but they would need to change during the final stretch. That seems less likely because of the Houston situation. So Houston, Toronto are out, is what we're hearing. The point is, under the new parameters, Cardinal keeping a lot of money, it's reopened the market. Old teams have re-engaged. It's not clear if the Cardinals will take a contract back to make it happen. From what I'm told, they'd rather send cash to make a deal return happen versus taking a contract. So the Yankees would probably have to find another suitor for Arenado. This could be a 3-team deal. I'm told that the spark was shifted after talks with Boston when they found themselves discussing names in a return for a larger return, and that led the basis to start talks back up with others, maybe a few new. It seems if the Cardinals want Gorman at third base, they'll have to spend they'll have to send way more money than initially wanted, but in return they get something back versus just dumping salary. So, reading those tea leaves, and I'm gonna talk. Oh, I'm getting my new semester from college starts tomorrow. So if you start hearing dings, I'm getting emails from professors. Um, Reading these tea leaves, St. Louis wants a return on this, which is likely, and I factor that in. The Yankees, to me, are going to get Arenado, and the reason I'm saying this is if they want to return, they're going to want an infielder and probably a pitcher. Now, it might not be Marcus Stroman. I think it will be. I think if the Yankees eat enough of that contract and they're getting money back from Arenado, they might do it. I think what's going to end up happening is you're going to see a deal like Ben Rice and Will Warren, or Ben Rice and Yandreas Gomez, going to St. Louis, and money and Arenado coming back, and then just a full salary dump for Stroman, going like anywhere they would take him. Like literally send him to Miami for like a draft pick or international spending money at that point. Like seriously, just dump that contract any way you can, or a cheap reliever that Matt Blake can fix. But the Yankees just got Dom Smith and this other kid from the Cubs who fill those two roles and those two voids. So that makes me think that there's something there. Arenado would also be a perfect fit, as I mentioned before. Now, talking about the mid-market thing, the GM of the Chicago Cubs also did some talking yesterday. Okay. Tim Ricketts, who's the owner of the Cubs, said that his goal each year is to break even, and he doesn't have Dodgers or Yankees money. He said fans should keep that in mind when asking them to spend more. This is deflating for every Cubs fan. Deflating for the Cubs and their fan base. And the Chicago Cubs are a very loyal fan base. They have stood by that team through thick and thin. It took them 108 years to win a championship. Most Cubs fans did not see a championship in their lifetime. Now a lot have. It's been 9 years since they won. They have gotten so cheap. It is not funny. So when I talk mid-market madness, which is the segment we're on now, I'm talking about the Cubs. I'm talking about the Cardinals. I'm talking about the Reds. I'm talking about the Pirates. I'm talking about the Guardians. I'm talking about the Tigers. I'm talking about the Twins. I'm talking about the White Sox. All those mid-market teams. I'm going to throw Atlanta in there. I'm going to throw the Orioles in there because I believe they're a mid-market team. The Nationals as well. All those middle market teams that don't have big city money. The Dodgers, the Padres to an extent. They're in San Diego. That's kind of a big city. The Yankees, the Mets, the Red Sox. Boston's kind of a big city. They all have money. Chicago should be spending like a big market team because that's a big market location. They should be spending money. Fact of the matter is they're not. And you have a fan base that's been very loyal to you over the years. Now, look, I get it. There were contracts that they signed that were bad. The contract for Cody Bellinger was awful. And they just dubbed the Yankees, who are a much better fit for him. Now, it wasn't that the player was awful, and I get he wasn't great. He wasn't as great as you want him. But there were, the park factors as well. So, Pete's options. Next segment. Pete's options. Pete is no longer a New York Met. That's it. Pete's gone. Goodbye. Where's he going to go? Probably Toronto. I could see the Angels as well. Not many suitors because of the first base market and because of what one Scott Boras wants for him. Scott Boras wants a lot of money for him. And that's it. Scott Boras thinks he's worth all this money. He's probably not. So now we're back here. We're back to the circle one. What are we going to do with him? Well, I think he's going to end up in Toronto. I think they're going to just throw a bag at whoever they can get. And that brings me to my next point with Pete, the New York Mets. The New York Mets started this offseason very promising by signing Juan Soto away from my New York Yankees. Signed him, big deal. Incentives take it to over $800 million. All right. Every Mets fan was like, "You're the little brother now." No. What have they done since? They signed Jesse Winker. They signed the AJ Minter on Friday. A couple of other little moves. Their starting rotations in shambles. You really only have two starters. Frankie Montas, maybe. I know from experience he sucks in starting pitching. Clay Holmes, who knows what he's going to look like as a starting pitcher? He's been a reliever his whole career. He's not a starter. So that's an experiment. Then you have Griffin Canning, Dave Peterson, and I forget the other one in that rotation. It's not a good rotation. That's not good enough in that division. Now we're forgetting if they're in the NL Central, they won it just by signing Juan Soto. It doesn't care if they have me go out and throw. That doesn't matter. But they're in the NL East. And as far as I'm concerned, the Braves, who've done nothing this offseason, and the Phillies, who haven't done much either, are better than them. And a lot better than them. Because if one thing goes wrong in that starting pitching rotation, they're finished. Their offense is not good enough. Their offense is not going to put up a lot of runs this year. They're going to have to win games on pitching. Look at their lineup. You have Lindor, you have Soto, you have Vientos, you have Nimmo. And after that is a bunch of question marks. Marte and Winker. They're going to combination for DH. You have McNeil somewhere in there. I don't even know who else they have. They have McNeil. They have Brett Beatty could probably play third base. They're banking on Luis Angel Acuna to come up. They're banking on this other kid, Montero, who's supposed to be good but is always on the IL. So what's the plan in Queens? So if they're not going to bring back Pete Alonso, they're just going to put Vientos there and they're going to try the kids. That's not a winning move. Mets fans were told when Steve Cohen comes to town that the almighty King Cohen's going to spend money and bring a championship to Queens. Where have we seen the championship aspirations come to Queens yet? Signing Juan Soto is fantastic. Steve Cohen simply was never going to be denied. That was almost inevitable. But what else have they done? Because they haven't. They haven't done anything. They haven't done really anything since signing Juan Soto. So now that begs the question, now what's the Mets' plan? They don't really have one. Is it going to be, let's start the season and figure it out at the deadline? Because as of now, David Stearns is operating this like a small market team. And I know every Met fan's going to be in the comments and in my DMs and tweeting and, oh, Vladdy. My haircut, I get cut by a Met fan. And I'm down there today. And he's like, oh, we're just going to sign Vladdy. I'm like, no, you're not. Like, the Blue Jays are actively trying to extend him. That's priority number one. Santander checkmark. Now priority is Bregman. Not Bregman, Vladdy. He is priority number one. Let's re-sign him. Let's extend him. The Blue Jays, if Vladdy hits the open market, he's a New York Met. Plain and simple. No one else is competing with them. If Vladimir Guerrero Jr. hits the open market, he is a New York Met. That's it. But if the Mets are smart, they lock up Vladdy long term and they figure out the situation. If they have a plan going forward that's going to make them a more attractive destination to these free agents. So if Pete's smart, he signs somewhere else quick before Vladdy can agree to an extension. The reason for that is because then the Mets can't come crawling back to him. Then the Mets are up Schitt's Creek without a paddle. They have nowhere to go. They're stuck with the kids starting, and you only know what's going to look like from there. Now, Bregman needs to sign. Bregman, not signed yet, is slowing this whole market. It is believed that an Arenado trade probably will not be struck until Bregman signs, unless the right deal comes along. If Brian Cashman calls up the GM tomorrow morning of the St. Louis Cardinals and says, hey, this is the deal. We really want Nolan Arenado. What's your asking price? We'll go in these parameters. We'll give you these 8 players, and you can choose 2 of them, maybe 3, and we'll send them back for Arenado. You don't want Stroman? Fine. Obviously, if you want Stroman, we'll pay $8 million. We'll pay $8 million of the Stroman deal for you to take on 10. That's what, if Brian Cashman's smart, you do that. And then you throw in another prospect, a Ben Rice. Do that and trade him. Now, the reason that the Cardinals are going to try and get chummy with this is because teams, whatever team, whether it's Boston or Detroit, loses out on Bregman, is going to come crawling up to the Tigers. To the Cardinals. Now, I think that Bregman goes to the Tigers. I really do. I have an article coming out tomorrow morning on my Substack. Follow it if you'd like. It's on the side on the socials over here in my Substack. I have an article coming out tomorrow morning where the last remaining sign. I think he goes to Detroit. I think he's going to reunite with AJ Hinch. I think Boston doesn't want to spend money either. They have not shown a willingness to spend money this offseason. So I think that plays a part in it. I think they're going to sign. I think he's going to go to the Tigers. Now, Boston and St. Louis had dialogue about Arenado, and those talks collapsed. Are they an option? I don't think so, because if the Cardinals had to reconstruct everything based on the dialogue they have with them, it's unlikely that they're going to go crawling back to them. I still think, obviously, it's going to be New York, but you never know. But the fact of the matter is, before anyone else can get moved, there's a logjam in this market, and it's Alex Bregman, and it's because of his agent, Scott Boras. Who's next? Who's going to be next to go off the board? I don't know. I think right now that teams are trying to figure out their rosters. I really think so. Santander came off. I think right now what needs to happen is someone needs to get traded somewhere. A trade happens and things are going to happen. Now, I do want to talk for second Hall of Fame tomorrow. I will be doing my Yankee weekly podcast tomorrow night, and I'll probably bring up the Hall of Fame on there. Ichiro probably getting in tomorrow, Billy Wagner, and my personal, I can't wait for this announcement, CC Sabathia getting into the Hall first ballot. I'm so excited for him to get in. I remember watching a lot of his career because he signed in '09 and I was kind of growing up at that point. I remember when he retired. I remember him being a cornerstone of the Yankees for so long, and obviously I remember Ichiro. I actually was at a game when he was a Yankee for like a year and a half, and he hit a home run, and I do remember that. Um, Obviously, both great players, both deserving. So congrats preliminarily to everyone in the Hall of Fame. My next one, I'll do a full segment on them. But that's going to be it for today. Obviously, if any big news happens over the next week, I'll do another podcast. I might just do it on X Live and Instagram Live if Instagram gives me back my permissions. TikTok won't let me do live for whatever reason, so I'm gonna have to dispute with them. But follow me on X, Instagram, TikTok. That's Rumble. I don't really know how to use it. I was on there for a minute. But yep, give me a follow on all those platforms. Thank you so much, and have a great day.